2 decades. That's how long Vivian and I were together. 20 whole years of what I genuinely believed was a solid, unbreakable partnership. We weren't some fairy tale couple, but we had something real, or at least that's what I kept telling myself, right up until the moment everything imploded in the most spectacular way possible. Let me back up and give you the full picture. Vivian and I crossed paths when we were both 23, basically still kids who thought that we had the world figured out when we really didn't know jack about anything. She had this incredible energy about her, this laugh that could light up an entire room and make everyone around her smile. When she looked at me, it felt like I was the center of her universe, like nothing else mattered except the two of us. I fell for her hard and fast, and she seemed to feel the same way about me. 6 months after our first date, we were standing at an altar, exchanging vows. Everyone in our lives told us we were being reckless, that we were too young and inexperienced, that we were making a massive mistake by rushing into marriage. We ignored all of them because we were convinced that love was all we needed to make it work. Looking back now, maybe we should have listened to at least some of that advice, but hindsight is always crystal clear, isn't it? The years rolled by and we built what I thought was a pretty good life together. Our son Damien came first. He's 17 now, tall and reserved like his old man. Then came our daughter Isla, who just turned 15 and has this sharp wit and fierce loyalty to the people she cares about. Those 2 kids became my entire world, and I busted my tail to provide them with everything they could possibly need or want. I climbed the corporate ladder one exhausting rung at a time, regularly pulling 60-hour work weeks, missing countless soccer matches and dance performances because somebody had to pay for the spacious house in the nice neighborhood, the private school education, the annual trips to theme parks and beach resorts. I wanted to give them all the things I never had growing up, the stability and comfort and opportunities that would set them up for success. And I wanted Vivian to have the comfortable life she deserved too. She never held down a job during our entire marriage. That was the arrangement we'd agreed on from the beginning. She stayed home, raised Damien and Isla, managed the household, and I brought home the paychecks. It seemed like a fair division of labor, and for a long time, I genuinely thought she was content with how things were. I thought we were both happy with the life we'd created together. But somewhere along the timeline, things started shifting in ways I didn't immediately recognize. The changes were so gradual and subtle that I convinced myself I was just being paranoid or overly sensitive. She stopped giving me goodbye kisses when I left for work in the mornings. She stopped asking how my day went when I came home exhausted at night. She started spending increasing amounts of time glued to her phone, always angling the screen away from my line of sight, always quickly locking it whenever I walked into the room. When I'd try to hold her hand, she'd find some excuse to pull away. When I'd suggest we go out for a date night like we used to, she'd sigh heavily and claim she was too tired or too busy. I kept rationalizing it all away, telling myself that marriages naturally lose some of that initial spark after 20 years, that we weren't starry-eyed 23-year-olds anymore, that we had responsibilities and stress, and teenagers who demanded our attention. Maybe she was just feeling overwhelmed by everything. Maybe I wasn't being attentive enough to her needs. Maybe I just needed to put in more effort to reconnect with her. So when Vivian approached me on a random Tuesday evening and told me she needed to get away for a few days, I didn't hesitate or question it for even a second. She called it a girl's getaway, explaining softly as we sat together on the couch that she and a handful of her close friends were planning to head up to some resort town a couple hours away for the weekend. She said she was feeling burnt out and suffocated by the monotony of our daily routine. She needed space to breathe, to reconnect with herself, to remember who she was as an individual outside of being a wife and mother. "I just need some time for myself," she said in this pleading voice that made me feel guilty for even considering saying no. "Just one weekend, please." I didn't think twice about it. "Of course you should go," I told her immediately. "You absolutely deserve a break." I actually encouraged her to take the trip because I wanted to be the supportive, understanding husband who didn't make his wife feel guilty for needing some personal time away from the family. I even helped her pack her suitcase that Thursday night before she left. Friday morning arrived, and she kissed Damien and Isla goodbye, gave me a quick hug, and walked out the door, rolling her suitcase behind her with this big smile on her face. I stood in the driveway watching her car disappear down the street, telling myself this was healthy for our relationship. The time apart would be good for both of us and help us appreciate each other more. I had absolutely no clue what was really happening. I just stood there like an idiot and watched my wife drive off to spend the weekend sleeping with another man. That Friday night, I found myself sitting on the couch with the kids, scrolling through various takeout menus on my phone, trying to fill this weird emptiness that had settled over the house like a heavy blanket. She'd only been gone for a few hours, but something felt fundamentally wrong in a way I couldn't quite articulate. I kept checking my phone, expecting a text from her that never came. The kids didn't seem to notice anything unusual. Damien was upstairs in his room gaming online with his friends. Isla was curled up next to me on the couch, half watching some reality TV show and half scrolling through social media on her own phone. I told myself I was being ridiculous and paranoid. She was fine. She was with her friends. She was recharging her batteries. But deep down in this place, I didn't want to acknowledge I knew something fundamental had changed in our relationship. I just didn't know yet that how catastrophically bad it actually was. Saturday dragged by at an agonizingly slow pace. I woke up to an empty bed, made breakfast for Damien and Isla, tried to keep myself busy with household chores and errands. But my mind kept wandering back to Vivian. Was she having fun? Was she thinking about us at all? Did she miss me even a little bit? By mid-afternoon, the kids were getting restless and bored. Isla was sprawled across the couch, complaining about having nothing to do. Damien had been holed up in his room all day. The house felt too quiet and too still, like something vital was missing. I was scrolling through my phone for probably the 100th time that day when this idea suddenly popped into my head. Why not surprise her? It seemed like the perfect romantic gesture. I'd drive up to the resort with Damien and Isla, bring her some flowers, maybe take her out to a nice dinner. It would show her I cared, show her I was thinking about her even while she was away. Maybe it would remind her of the early days of our relationship when I used to surprise her with spontaneous romantic gestures all the time. "Hey," I called out to the kids. "How would you guys feel about taking a drive up to see your mom?" Isla's face immediately lit up with excitement. "Really? Like surprise her?" "Yeah, what do you think?" I asked. "Yeah, she's going to freak out," she said enthusiastically, already jumping off the couch and running upstairs to tell Damien about the plan. Within 20 minutes, we were all piled into the car and heading out. The kids were buzzing with anticipation in the back seat, excited about the surprise we were about to pull off. Damien kept joking about how shocked Vivian would be when we showed up. Isla was already planning out exactly what she'd say when she saw her mom. I felt genuinely good about the decision, even proud of myself for being the kind of thoughtful husband who didn't take his wife for granted. The 2-hour drive passed quickly. We talked and laughed and listened to music, and for the first time in weeks, everything felt normal and right, like we were actually functioning as a family unit again instead of just people living in the same house. We pulled into the resort parking lot around 5 in the evening. The place was clearly upscale and expensive, all stone facades and perfectly manicured gardens and a lobby with these massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a beautiful lake. I parked near the main entrance and turned around to look at the kids in the back seat. "Wait here for just a minute," I told them. "Let me go find out what room she's in, and then we'll go surprise her together." They both nodded, still grinning with excitement about the surprise. I walked through the sliding glass doors into the lobby. Soft jazz music was playing overhead. The lighting was dim and warm, clearly designed to create an intimate, luxurious atmosphere. I scanned the space, looking for the front desk so I could ask about Vivian's room number. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the bar area with a man I'd never seen before in my life. At first, my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. Maybe it was one of her friend's husbands, I thought. Maybe they'd all decided to bring their partners along at the last minute, and she just forgot to mention it. Maybe there was some perfectly innocent explanation for what I was seeing. Then she leaned into him. His arms slid around her waist, pulling her close against his body, and she tilted her head up toward him with this smile on her face that I hadn't seen in months. And then she kissed him. Not some polite, friendly peck on the cheek, not an accidental brush of lips. A real, deep, intimate kiss. The kind of kiss that comes from familiarity and history and something that goes way beyond a drunken mistake or a moment of weakness. The entire world stopped moving. I couldn't hear the jazz music anymore. Couldn't hear the conversations happening around me in the lobby. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding violently in my ears, like it was trying to break through my rib cage. My fists clenched involuntarily at my sides. My vision narrowed until all I could see was the two of them together. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to move, to charge across that lobby, to rip him away from her and beat him into the ground, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain that was tearing through my chest in that moment. I took a step forward, fully intending to do exactly that. Then I heard Isla's voice behind me. "Dad?" I froze completely. I turned around slowly. She was standing in the doorway with Damien right behind her, and they'd both seen it. They'd seen their mother kissing another man. Their faces told me everything I needed to know. Isla's eyes were wide and already filling with tears. Damien's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "Dad?" Isla whispered again, her voice cracking with emotion. "That's Mom." Something inside me snapped in that moment, but not into blind rage like I'd expected. It snapped into something colder and sharper and more focused. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and started recording video. My hands were completely steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. I zoomed in just enough to clearly capture her face and his face and the way their bodies fit together and the way she laughed at something he said to her. 30 seconds. That's all I needed to document what was happening. Then I turned to my kids and said quietly, "Let's go." Isla grabbed my arm desperately. "Dad, wait, we're leaving right now." I cut her off firmly. I didn't look back at Vivian. I walked out of that lobby with my head held high and my jaw set, with Damien and Isla trailing behind me in stunned, devastated silence. The 2-hour drive back home was, without question, the longest drive of my entire life. Isla cried quietly in the back seat, with her face pressed against the window. Damien stared straight ahead, saying absolutely nothing. His hands balled into tight fists, resting on his lap. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my mind racing with images I couldn't unsee no matter how hard I tried. Her, him, the kiss, the smile, the casual ease of it all, like I didn't exist, like 20 years of marriage meant absolutely nothing. When we finally pulled into our driveway, I turned off the engine and just sat there for a long moment, staring at our dark house. Then I looked at Damien and Isla in the rearview mirror. "I'm filing for divorce," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm not going to let her do this to us." Isla wiped her eyes and nodded silently. Damien looked directly at me, his voice low and hard when he spoke. "Good." I didn't sleep at all that night. While my kids were upstairs, Isla crying herself to sleep and Damien locked in his room with his headphones on, trying to block out the world, I sat in my home office with my laptop open and my mind on fire with thoughts of revenge and justice. Vivian was still at the resort, still with him, completely oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. She had no idea I'd seen her, no idea that the clock had just started ticking on the end of her comfortable, cushy life. And I was going to use every single second of her ignorance to my strategic advantage. First priority, it was the money. I logged into all of our joint bank accounts, the ones I'd been depositing my paychecks into for 2 full decades. Every single dollar in those accounts had come from me, from my work, from my sacrifice, from my 60-hour work weeks and missed family dinners and exhausting business trips. She hadn't contributed a single cent to any of it. I transferred everything, every last dollar, into a brand new account that only had my name on it. Checking, savings, the emergency fund, all of it. Gone from her access. Then, I moved on to the credit cards. I called each credit card company one by one and removed her as an authorized user on every single card. Canceled every card she had access to. Within 2 hours, she was completely financially cut off from everything. If she tried to buy so much as a cup of coffee Sunday morning, the card would be declined. I wanted her to feel the impact immediately. I wanted her to panic and realize something was very wrong. Second priority was legal protection. I wasn't going to make a single move forward without covering myself legally. Early Sunday morning, before the sun had even come up, I called a divorce attorney that a colleague had recommended to me once, someone with a reputation for being absolutely ruthless and thorough in court. I left a detailed message on his voicemail. He called me back within an hour. "I needed an emergency consultation," I told him. "Monday morning, first thing." "What's the situation?" he asked. "My wife is having an affair. I have video evidence of it, and I want full custody of my kids." There was a brief pause on the line, then he replied, "I'll see you at 8 a.m. sharp." I spent the rest of Sunday meticulously documenting absolutely everything. I uploaded the video to a secure cloud storage folder with multiple backups. I wrote down a detailed timeline of events. When Vivian left Friday morning, where she said she was going, who she claimed she'd be with, I pulled up years' worth of our financial records, clearly showing me supporting her financially, while she contributed nothing to the household income. I took screenshots of her text messages from Friday morning, the ones where she'd told me she loved me and would miss us while she was away. Every detail, every lie, every single piece of evidence I'd need to completely bury her in divorce court. Sunday afternoon, I sat down with Damien and Isla. We gathered in the living room, just the three of us. And for the first time since Saturday, I really let myself see the full extent of the damage this had caused them. Isla's eyes were swollen and red from crying. Damien looked hollow and empty, like something essential had been carved out of his chest. I'm not going to sugarcoat any of this, I began carefully. What you both saw yesterday was real. Your mother's having an affair. She lied to all of us. And I'm ending the marriage. Isla's lip trembled. What's going to happen to us? I'm going to fight for full custody of both of you, I told them firmly. You won't be forced to see her if you don't want to. You won't be forced into having a relationship with her. That choice is entirely yours to make. I don't want to see her, Damien said immediately, his voice flat and cold. Not ever. Isla hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. I don't either. Not right now, at least. I pulled them both into a tight hug. They held on to me desperately, and for the first time since this nightmare had started, I felt something other than pure rage burning in my chest. I felt purpose. I felt determination. I was going to protect these kids no matter what it took, no matter what I had to do. All weekend long, Vivian's phone stayed completely silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. She was too busy with her lover to bother checking in on her family back home. But Sunday night around 9 o'clock, my phone finally rang. Her name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, just letting it ring several times. Then I answered. Hey, babe, she said brightly, her voice cheerful and carefree, like absolutely nothing was wrong. Just calling to say hi. I miss you guys so much. How are the kids doing? My jaw tightened painfully. I could hear the lie in her voice, the performance she was putting on. I kept my tone completely calm and measured when I responded. I'm really glad you're having such a fun time, I said evenly, because I actually brought the kids up there yesterday to surprise you. Complete silence on the other end of the line. And we saw you, I continued. We saw you kissing him in the lobby. More silence. Then she started stammering frantically. Wait, what? No, babe, that wasn't... I don't know what you think you saw, but... I recorded it? I cut her off coldly. I have video evidence. The kids saw it too with their own eyes. They're done with you. Her voice cracked with panic. Please, just let me explain. There's nothing to explain, I said in the coldest voice I could manage. I've canceled all the credit cards. I've pulled all my money out of the joint accounts. I've already spoken to a divorce lawyer. Don't bother coming home. You can't do this, she cried desperately, her words tumbling over each other. Please, just listen to me for 1 minute. I just did listen. Goodbye, Vivian. And I hung up on her. 10 seconds later, my phone started buzzing continuously with incoming text messages. I ignored the first several. Then I opened them and read through what she was sending. Please, you don't understand what really happened. It was a terrible mistake. I was confused about everything. It didn't mean anything at all. You didn't see what you think you saw. That wasn't actually me in the video. I stared at that last message for a long moment, genuinely amazed at her audacity. Then I opened the video file and hit send, forwarding it directly to her. Her response came about a minute later. Just a single word. Please. No more texts came after that. Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I walked into the law office. The attorney was exactly what I'd hoped for when I'd made the appointment. Mid-50s, expensive, sharp suit, completely no-nonsense expression on his face. He shook my hand firmly, gestured to a leather chair across from his desk, and got straight down to business without any small talk. Show me what you have, he said simply. I pulled out my phone and played the video I'd recorded. He watched it without any visible expression, his eyes focused and professional throughout. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair and nodded once. This is clean, clear, and completely undeniable, he said. You've got everything you need for a strong case. What about custody of the kids, I asked, which was my primary concern. With this video evidence and your complete financial contribution to the household over 20 years, full custody is very likely, he explained confidently, especially if the children are old enough to express their own preference to the judge. How old are they? 17 and 15, I answered. Perfect, he replied. At those ages, their voices carry very significant weight in custody decisions, If they clearly don't want to see her, the court will absolutely respect that preference. Relief washed over me like a wave. How fast can we move on this? I'll file all the paperwork today, he said. She'll be officially served with divorce papers by the end of this week. But I need to warn you about something. He leaned forward, his expression turning serious. She's going to fight this hard. She's going to beg and manipulate and maybe even threaten you. You need to stay strong emotionally. Don't engage with her on an emotional level. Let me handle all of it through proper legal channels. I nodded firmly. I'm ready for whatever comes. That evening, I was in the kitchen with Damien and Isla when the front door suddenly opened. Vivian walked in around 6 o'clock, looking like she'd been through absolute hell. Her hair was a complete mess. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She'd clearly driven straight back from the resort after realizing her credit cards weren't working and her bank accounts were empty. The three of us were sitting at the kitchen table, eating dinner. None of us looked at her when she entered. Please, she said, her voice trembling with desperation. Please, just let me explain what happened. I didn't turn around. I didn't even look up from my plate. There's nothing to explain. She took a step closer to the table. It was a horrible mistake. I was so stupid. I don't love him at all. I love you. I love this family more than anything. Isla looked up at her, and for the first time I saw real genuine anger burning in my daughter's eyes instead of just hurt. You kissed him, Mom, she said sharply. We all saw you do it. Vivian's face crumpled like she'd been slapped. She reached desperately for Isla's hand. Sweetie, please, just listen. Isla jerked her hand away violently. Don't touch me. Damien kept eating mechanically, his eyes fixed firmly on his plate, completely refusing to even acknowledge his mother's presence in the room. Vivian turned back to me, her voice frantic and desperate. What do you want me to do? I'll do absolutely anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut him off completely and forever. I want a divorce, I interrupted, my voice like ice. I've already filed the paperwork. You'll be served the official papers by the end of this week. Her breath hitched audibly. You can't take my kids away from me. They don't want you, I stated flatly. Ask them yourself if you don't believe me. She looked at Isla, then at Damien. Both of them refused to meet her eyes or acknowledge her in any way. Get out of this house, I said quietly, but firmly. Where am I supposed to go? She cried. I don't have any money. You took everything from the accounts. I finally turned to look directly at her. You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with someone else. The bluntness of my words shocked her into complete silence. She just stood there, trembling, mascara streaking down her face in dark lines, looking like a complete stranger to me. This is cruel, she finally whispered. No, I replied quietly. This is justice and consequences for your choices. She left that night without another word. I heard later through mutual acquaintances that she'd gone to stay with one of her friends, one of the same friends who'd supposedly been on the girls' trip with her. But within just a few days, word had spread throughout our social circle about what had actually happened. The friend's husband found out that his wife had helped enable the affair and was absolutely furious about it. Vivian got kicked out of their house, too. She tried calling her lover, desperate for somewhere to go. He blocked her number immediately. Turns out he'd been in it purely for the thrill and excitement, not for dealing with any real-world consequences or responsibilities. She was completely alone with nowhere to turn. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. I got full custody of both kids exactly like my attorney had predicted. The judge listened carefully to Damien and Isla, heard their voices and their pain and their clear choice, and ruled entirely in my favor. Vivian was granted supervised visitation rights, but only if the kids actually agreed to see her. They didn't agree. They wanted nothing to do with her. She lost the house, lost the comfortable lifestyle, lost absolutely everything she'd taken for granted for 20 years. And because she'd never worked a single day during our entire marriage, she had no resume, no marketable job skills, no professional experience whatsoever. She ended up in a tiny apartment an hour away from us, working as a cashier at a grocery store for minimum wage with no benefits and no safety net. Her friends gradually distanced themselves from her. Her family was deeply disappointed in her choices. Her lover had vanished the moment things got real and complicated. She'd become a cautionary tale in our social circle, the woman who threw away a good, stable marriage for a weekend fling that meant nothing. Meanwhile, I focused entirely on helping Damien and Isla heal from the trauma. We started going to family therapy together. Isla slowly began to process everything and heal emotionally, though some nights I still heard her crying quietly in her room. Damien threw himself completely into basketball, channeling all his anger and hurt into something productive and physical. They didn't talk about their mother much. When they did bring her up, it was with this strange mixture of lingering anger and complete indifference. She'd become essentially a ghost in their lives, someone who used to exist but didn't anymore. As for me personally, I didn't feel victorious or triumphant about any of it. I just felt empty and hollowed out. I'd done what I absolutely had to do to protect my kids and stand up for myself and refused to be disrespected and betrayed. But the marriage I thought I had, the life I thought I'd built over 20 years had all been a lie. And that realization haunted me more than the actual affair itself. How long had she been unhappy in our marriage? How long had she been planning this betrayal? Had she ever really truly loved me? Or had I just been convenient for her? A provider and safety net? Someone stable to build a comfortable life with while she waited around for something more exciting to come along? I'd never know the real answers to those questions, and eventually I stopped asking them because they didn't matter anymore. 6 months after the divorce was completely finalized, Vivian called me out of the blue. I almost didn't answer when I saw her name on my screen, but something made me pick up the phone. Her voice was small and broken when she spoke. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything I did to you and the kids. I didn't respond right away. Then quietly I replied, I know you are. She hesitated. Do you think Damien and Isla will ever be able to forgive me? I honestly don't know, I answered truthfully. That's completely up to them to decide, not me. She started crying on the other end of the line. I ruined everything good in my life, she sobbed. Yes, I cut simply. You did. She hung up without saying anything else. I sat there in my living room afterwards, staring at my phone, thinking about the 20 years we'd spent together, all the good times and bad times, and the single moment when it all fell apart irreparably. I didn't regret how I'd handled any of it, but I didn't feel good about it either. I just felt finished with that entire chapter of my life. People ask me sometimes if I regret how harshly I handled the situation, if I think I was too cruel to her, if I should have considered giving her a second chance to make things right. The answer is absolutely not, and here's why. She didn't cheat on me once in a single moment of weakness or poor judgment. She planned it out deliberately. She lied straight to my face. She packed her bags, kissed our kids goodbye, and spent an entire weekend with another man while I sat at home like an idiot thinking she was with her girlfriends. And when I caught her red-handed, she didn't immediately confess and apologize. She denied everything. She tried to gaslight me and make me question what I'd seen with my own eyes. She only admitted the truth when I showed her the video evidence that made denial impossible. That's not a mistake or an accident. That's a calculated choice with full awareness of the consequences. So no, I don't feel bad about how things turned out for her. I protected my kids from further damage. I protected myself from continued betrayal. And I made absolutely sure she understood that actions have real consequences in life. She gambled everything we'd built together on a weekend affair. And she lost everything because of that choice. I'm not the villain in this story, no matter how some people try to paint it. I'm just a man who refused to be made a fool of and refused to let someone treat me with complete disrespect. I genuinely don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone romantically again. Maybe I won't. Maybe this experience broke something fundamental inside me that can't ever be fully repaired. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. I'll never let anyone disrespect me like that again for as long as I live. And neither should any of you reading this. If someone shows you who they really are, through their actions, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses for them. Don't rationalize away the red flags. Don't convince yourself that things will magically get better if you just try harder or love them more. They won't get better. Some bridges, once burned completely, can never be rebuilt, no matter how much you might want them to be. And some people simply don't deserve to be given a second chance after what they've done. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but at least I learned it, and maybe my experience can help someone else who's going through something similar right now. Looking back now, there were probably signs I missed earlier in our marriage. The way she'd become increasingly distant over the past year, the way she'd started dressing differently, paying more attention to her appearance, the way she'd become defensive whenever I asked simple questions about her day. I chalked it all up to normal marriage stuff, convinced myself every couple goes through rough patches. What I didn't realize was that giving her space was exactly what allowed her to pursue this affair. The therapy sessions with Damien and Isla have been helpful but painful. Hearing them talk about how betrayed they feel, how their understanding of family has been shattered, tears me apart. They're at vulnerable ages, 17 and 15, trying to figure out their identities. The therapist reminds me that kids are resilient, that they can heal with proper support. I have to believe that's true, though I know this experience has fundamentally changed who they are. Damien has become even more withdrawn, throwing himself into basketball with intense focus. His grades have slipped slightly, enough that teachers have expressed concern. Isla has gone the opposite direction, becoming clingy in a way she hasn't been since childhood. She's terrified of losing me too, constantly asking if I'm okay, if I still love her, if I'm going to leave. It breaks my heart because she shouldn't carry that fear at 15. The financial aspect was straightforward since I'd been the sole earner. Vivian tried arguing for alimony, claiming she'd sacrificed career potential. But the affair and video evidence torpedoed any sympathy. She walked away with essentially nothing except personal belongings and her car. Some people suggested I was vindictive, but that money represented 20 years of my labor and sacrifice. She threw away her claim when she betrayed our vows. The hardest part isn't the betrayal itself anymore. It's realizing I never really knew her at all. 20 years together, and I had no idea who she actually was. The woman I thought I married valued family and loyalty above everything. But that woman apparently never existed except in my imagination. Some nights I lie awake replaying our relationship, looking for clues I missed. Was any of it real? Or was I just a safe choice, a provider she could build a comfortable life with? The worst moments are when I catch myself missing her, missing the routine and familiarity. 20 years of habit don't disappear overnight. Damien and Isla have asked if I'll ever date again. Honestly, I have no idea. Trusting someone enough to let them into our lives feels impossible right now. My focus is entirely on helping my kids heal and rebuilding our lives as a family of 3. We've started new traditions, trying to create positive memories. Friday movie nights, Sunday breakfast where we cook together, monthly outings to try new things. It's not the same as before, but it's ours, built on honesty instead of lies. I've had difficult conversations with them about relationships and trust, about how not everyone is like their mother. I worry about the lessons they're taking away, how it might affect their future relationships. We talk openly in therapy about how their mother's choices were hers alone and don't define what relationships have to be. The legal aftermath is settling down. Vivian sends occasional messages through her lawyer asking if the kids might see her. I pass them along without pressure. So far, they've declined every time, and I support whatever they decide. I hear occasional updates about Vivian through the grapevine. Still working at the grocery store, still in that small apartment, still alone. Part of me feels grim satisfaction knowing she faces real consequences. But another part just feels sad about the whole situation. Sad that 20 years came to this. Sad that our kids lost their mother. Sad that someone I once loved became someone I don't recognize. But mostly I feel determined to move forward and build the best life possible for my kids and myself. We're survivors, and we're going to come out stronger. So that's my story in all its messy, painful detail. Was I wrong for how I handled it? Should I have been more forgiving or given her a chance to make amends? I'm genuinely curious what you all think about this situation. Drop your thoughts in the comments because I really do want to hear different perspectives on whether I went too far in my response or if I did exactly what needed to be done to protect myself and my children.